Hello everyone, and welcome to this video, which is in our Great Engine Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler, and we are taking a look at an absolutely gorgeous game in the Jobava London system, played by Komodo Dragon against the Baron at the World Computer Chess Championship. So, how does this opening crop up? Well, the reason I'm so interested in it is that I've just been reading a book, an excellent book by Simon Williams, Ginger GM, on the Jobava London system, and well, Komodo actually plays a novelty on move 5, and it turns out pretty powerfully. So any Jobava London system fans out there, this is the game for you. So d4, knight f6, knight c3, d5, bishop f4, a6, e3, e6. This is one of Black's main systems. Against the Jobava London system, Black plays a6 to stop knight b5, puts the light square bishop inside the pawn chain. That's not such a stupid thing to do, because one of the things that the Jobava London system does is white advances the kingside pawn. So putting the bishop out on f5 or g4 is just getting in the way of those advancing pawns. And Black's idea is, well, either to play bishop to b4 or to, advance with c5 and b5. And basically White's going to try and expand on the king side, and Black's going to take some space on the queen side, and hoping that this knight on c3, just in front of the c pawn, which is the odd thing about the Jobava London system, that that will give Black some tempi to develop counterplay. Pretty sensible plan. And this is the favourite plan of, I think, Komodo and Stockfish when you put the Jobava London system on there. G4 is very well known and described in detail by Simon in his book, but Komodo played a real novelty, H4. Ha! There we are, H4. You couldn't believe it, could you? If you just went back 5 or 6 years in time, you wouldn't believe the number of H4 possibilities that there are in these positions. So c5 and now g4. So if White goes g4, then the reply to c5 is g5. h4, c5, g4 is just trying to delay that, basically. And well, sometimes by delaying an advance like g5, you can well, either get a better version of it, trick Black into a move it doesn't want to play, and sometimes it just transposes back. But g4 is pretty nice. So the Baron went queen b6 in this position, which is the main move. There is another possibility. C takes d4 is possible here. E takes d4, queen b6. Yeah, in general, I mean, this feels like something of a concession for Black, really. I mean, these exchanges always seem to free up the position, but I mean, queen takes b2 is dangerous, and it also opens the diagonal for the bishop. Stockfish against Dragon, that was going g5, knight h5 now. That knight is hanging, but queen b2 would be possible. Bishop d2, knight hanging, g6, queen e2. Threatening knight takes d5, but of course the d4 pawn is hanging there. So knight c6, castle queen side, and then queen a5, king b1. And here, funnily enough, my engines agreed to draw because this was obviously 0.00. But yeah, it's just a very, very unclear position as well. So after g4, queen b6, g5, and well, judging from the clock times, this was where Baron was no longer in its book, which is kind of a bad time to leave the book because the complications are just starting. Queen takes b2, knight ge2, and now Black has to decide. Now, if you letting my engine, Stockfish and Dragon, play this, and also leaving Stockfish on this for huge amounts of time, depth 77 and 540,000 million nodes. Actually, they just come up with a forced draw, which is funnily enough. C takes d4, rook b1, queen a3, g takes f6, d takes c3, and now this move e4. I mean, the board is just on fire, and certainly, in a human game, if you had this against an opponent, I think they'd be in very big trouble here. But g takes f6, e takes d5, e5, bishop e3, and I mean, it looks just like some sort of bishop e3 Najdorf Sicilian, doesn't it? I mean, Black's obviously taken this b2 pawn, but this open file is pretty good. And well, I mean, we've got some pretty decent attacking ideas here. what Stockfish came up with was this idea: Queen f3 takes, Knight c5. Yeah, I mean, black's just exchanging off pieces and, well, trying to both remove white attacking potential and also, weaken white's king as well. And bishop a2, queen a2, and then e4. Just, I mean, just incredible tactics, basically. This one's quite neat because it's blocking the protection of the bishop to c2. So we'll actually have queen takes c2 as well. And, well, this was the draw by Perpetual, quite an amazing one. White can't go king f2 because of rook f3 check, so we just end up with a draw there. And, yeah, the fact that the bishop's protection of c2 has been blocked, that's quite important because you can't go king g2 because I'm guessing that queen c2 check is going to be the move. Should have checked that, really, but that's looking like the big reason there. So, yeah, I mean, enormously sharp, maybe some sort of forced draw somewhere. I mean, I should point out as well that after queen a3, you've got another idea. Instead of gf, there's also rook b3, queen a5, takes, rook g1, and knight g3, which is also, looking very dangerous for black. I mean, knight h5 and stuff is coming in. So, yeah, this is another thing. Again, my engines agree to draw here in this position, just 0.00. It's been like that for about 8 or 10 moves. No point in playing it out. But, yeah, I mean, again, just a total mess, this position, and great attacking chances for white. So, knight h5 was played by the Baron. That's still decent, but it's starting to get a little bit risky. I mean, white's centre is very solid. Black's won this b pawn, but at the cost of a lot of time and an open rook here. And we've got this knight on h5 as a target. And yeah, this is a little bit tricky. Now, yeah, what did my engines want here? Stockfish and Dragon. Dragon was playing h6 straight away, just trying to break up white's attack there. Was very, very sharp. But yeah, again, black was sort of okay. Stockfish, well, as black was looking for this. Bishop g2, bishop b7, vaguely similar to the game actually. Takes, d takes c5, and again they thought that this position was quite equal. But again with white we've got this idea of knight f4 takes h5. There's always going to be danger against the king, so it's a total mess basically. Maybe equal for the engines, but very, very playable for white this position. Baron really started taking some risks, and here the position starts to turn white's way and actually accelerates quite quickly. So c takes d4 was played, rook b3, and knight takes d4. This is one of the differences really, the way that Baron's done it with this immediate capture on d4. We can take with a knight on d4. Looks a little bit loose, but we have got this attack on the knight on h5. So g6 played and bishop e2, and yeah, we're attacking this one, and well, we're also getting ready just to castle kingside, get out of this pin, and then start opening up the centre with e4. This was really the last moment when some nasty things happening in the DRC there. This is really the last moment where the Baron could have resisted, because after the Baron's next move, then the end, Stockfish, Komodo Dragon, they're all saying, finished, time to relax. Knight g7 is what my engines wanted, and then there are a couple of interesting things. E4 was what Dragon wanted, bishop b4, queen d2, castles, and now h5. Knight d7, h6, knight e8 takes, bishop e7, slightly mysterious move there, castles, knight c5, queen e3, exchange sacrifice. I mean, white's got all this kingside pressure. Yeah, black can't take on d5 because e7 is hanging. Yeah, I mean, it's just a total mess basically. Apparently equal according to the engines, but in a practical game, definitely worth playing. And I mean, there were quite a lot of lines like this. For example, Stockfish was going castle straight away, queen d2, rook b1, chasing the bishop away, and now e4. And yeah, again, this ending for the pawn, white's got, super compensation here. We've got ideas like bishop f3, knight c4. I mean, black's going to have to be really accurate to hold this. Yeah, of course, Komodo as black can do it, but again, human opponents, definitely suffer. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty nice, really. The Baron went knight d7, and this is basically over now. But it's over because you know, the engines nowadays, they have such a fantastic feel for mobility, giving up material, that sort of thing. And well, that's what Komodo Dragon does. Castles, bishop g7, knight c2, lovely move. Just preparing to come knight f4 takes h5 and attacking all of these weak dark squares. And of course, you know, the bishop can come in here, and all these pawns are on light squares. You know, well, actually every single pawn of blacks is on light squares, so the dark squares are pretty important. The Baron goes to grab an exchange. There was still some way of holding on. Actually, the both Komodo and Stockfish want to try and break up this this dark squared hold that white has got. So after h6, g6 was Stockfish's move, undermining this pawn. Castles, bishop d6, knight c5 takes, rook b1, queen d8. This was Stockfish against Komodo Dragon. I mean, actually, after here, it looks like a total mess. I wouldn't be able to tell you who's better. Yeah, Stockfish considered that that white had a +1 advantage, but actually it was you know, unable to convert this. I'm not too surprised. I mean, this king is weak. We've got two bishops, and well, the position got a complete mess here. I know I'd get mated in a blitz game here, but yeah, somehow you know, the game proceeded and it ended in a draw. But a huge mess, of course. This h6 move was pretty nice. As White Dragon played something that was probably a bit more controlled. Just took with a knight there and went f4. And yeah, I mean, in principle, you know, this looks really good for White. Ended up in a draw. But again, I'd take White every single time. We're not even material down, and we've got all this sort of grip on the dark squares. So that would have been the best defence. Baron went for the win of the exchange, and well, it turns out that yeah, this win of the exchange is actually well, I don't, long-term losing. I mean, the engines are jumping to 3.5 or 4. I mean, what is Black's problem in this position? Obviously, you know, the dark squares are incredibly weak, and this bishop on g7 was going to get targeted by knight takes h5. So, I mean, Black does have to exchange it and exchange it off for this dark squared bishop. The problem is, once that dark squared bishop is gone, you're just left with really passive pieces. The black queen's still active, but this bishop's going to have real problems getting active, and these rooks are really struggling to find any open lines. You know, for all that, it's not completely obvious. I mean, if you played a move like knight h5 or queen h5, yeah, you might expect that black could, you know, possibly get castled on the queen side and develop. But yeah, I mean, Komodo Dragon comes up with an absolutely amazing idea here. This quiet move, bishop g3, and I have to say, you know, I didn't understand at all what the point was when I saw it. But after queen c3, white plays knight h5, and the idea is to go f takes g3. So wrecking the white pawn structure, but opening up the f file to attack the king. And all of a sudden, you know, this theoretical, you know, white's got a bind on the dark squares. It becomes much more than that. I mean, it's a real danger of getting mated quite soon. However, you know, I mean, you know, this is far from obvious to me that, you know, this sort of thing, this extra sacrifice, giving up the e3 pawn, weakening the light squares around the white king, that this is actually decent for white. You know, this is really adding a lot. But yeah, of course, you know, there's a lot of calculation involved, and well, you know, it all ends up in white's favour. I mean, I have to say that Komodo's game against Stockfish from here was incredibly artistic. I'll just show you that. King d8, quite reasonable, just trying to get the king out of the way. Rook f3, queen e5, queen a1, gorgeous move. Threatening knight c6 check, winning the queen. Obviously, if the king escapes there, I've got knight b5 check. So f6 was played, rook takes f6, queen d6. So the idea of that move was to, well, block this diagonal, so knight b5 check is no longer attacking the rook on h8. But knight g7 played. Ah, lovely that move. Just powering into to e6. King c7, knight e6, knight f5. Just all these attacks by the knight on the dark squares. Queen d7, queen, king a7, knight d6. Beautiful play here, you know, just the knight's just completely dominating everything. I mean, all the black pieces just completely powerless. And queen c6, knight d4, queen d5, and well, knight b5 takes, and if king b8, queen e5 checks. So black had to give up the queen. This is of course completely winning for white. But really lovely, this queen a1 and knight g7. You know, when you see that, you really like it. Baron played the most obvious way, played e5 here, just to try and break out. Rook e1 and bishop g4. So nice tactics here. If queen takes g4, then queen takes e1. But we go knight f6 check, king f8, knight g4, queen takes d4, queen f3, e4, queen f4. And again, you know, black's the exchange and a pawn up, and it's not 100% obvious, you know, already at this stage that you know, that white should be so winning. It's just the problem is that black can't get this king really developed. It means that this rook is also going to suffer, and yeah, for black to actually get at the white king is pretty difficult. And actually, you know, one of the key things is that white's got this move c4, going to break open the center, bring the rook into play, and then yeah, again, you know, it's even worse for black. But yeah, I mean, you know, you can, of course, you know, you see it like this and you see, oh yeah, well, obviously that was very good. But again, this sort of judgment from afar, very, very tricky. So queen b6 played to stop the white queen from invading, and then c4, breaking open the center. Rook to d8, rook to f1, queen e6, queen c7, and here and here. And well, I mean, we've got this threat of queen f6 and then knight f6 check. So not easy at all. Queen d6 played by black here. Queen f2 threatening f7. Queen c7, queen d4 hitting the rook on h8, rook g8 and c takes d5. And well, what are the next moves? Well, we've got knight h6 or knight f6 coming in. Both of which are pretty awful, and of course, you know, we're starting to pick up pawns, so it's starting to get materially. It's also starting to get a lot better for black. So the baron went rook g7, knight f6, rook now completely paralyzed here. E3, queen takes e3. You know, the knight also covering the d5 pawn, and now basically we've got this perfect situation. You know, very AlphaZero like, you have to say, where you know, exchange sacrifice, a minor piece dominating a rook. And it's just a question of getting into the e-file and somehow getting onto that diagonal, and the black king is toast. So queen e7, queen d4, some checks from the baron. Just a very slow increasing of pressure here. Queen e6, nice little trick, hoping for de. Rook takes d4, but we go check, and queen c3. Queen still on this diagonal, still making lots of horrible threats. But you've no longer got the pin, so, you know, black's paralyzed again. And now h5, we're just looking for h6, and then the rook will be chased away from the defense of h7 pawn, and we'll have knight h7 check as well. Queen b7, queen e5. I mean, it's amazing how powerless black is, and again, it's amazing the judgment, you know, this exchange sacrifice from so far back that you know, that led to this. Seen many AlphaZero games about it, and you can definitely think about that in your own games, but obviously having the courage to do it, always tricky. Queen e7, queen d4, rook a8, rook e5, queen c5, queen e4, queen c8 check, and black resigned here. I mean, I think just after king h4 here, I mean, what can black do? I mean, I'm just going to go d6, d7, and then rook to e8 and checkmate. I mean, it's a really gorgeous game from Komodo. I mean, I think first of all, quite an interesting novelty in the Jobava London system. When you think how often this position has been played, amazing that that, you know, on move 5 you can already find something. And the basis of it is just some really unclear lines. You know, maybe 0.00 for the engines after huge amounts of calculation. But a human player would definitely really struggle to work his way through this position. And, you know, you certainly can't rule out that you can find some extra possibilities, you know, in there with some more work with your engine. And, you know, I thought this exchange sacrifice was fantastic, and in particular this move bishop g3. You know, that gives back a pawn, ruins your pawn structure, but just for the activity of the F file. You know, I really found that amazing, and yeah, the resulting position after, yeah, very typical AlphaZero. You know, just understanding the potential of the pieces, and seeing that in particular these two pieces have got no potential, and all these three pieces of white have got enormous potential. Yeah, just wonderful judgment basically, and yeah, just shows the difference between, you know, the top engines and yeah, an engine that's not quite as strong like Baron. Yeah, Paul Baron's had a bit of a rough time in this championship. I think it made 0 out of 8 actually, but it did contribute to a lot of very nice games from the other engines. So hard luck, but I think yeah, definitely lovely that it competed as well. And there we are. So hope you enjoyed that game. If you like the video, why not give a like, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement, which has got loads and loads of absolutely gorgeous games like this. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching the video. Keep tuned, there'll be plenty more from me all through the rest of the year. Thanks very much.